Hello guys, welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to create this Elden Ring environment inside of Unreal Engine 5 using only free assets. So this tutorial is for beginners. I'll explain every step of the way. We're going to first start off by sculpting our own landscape, blocking out our level with these rock meshes. We're going to apply a landscape material, and we're going to create this little environment scene that you see here on the screen. We're going to take some Megascans trees and grass and paint it into our environment, adjust the lighting, and finally add our own little character to our scene. Now, if you enjoy this free tutorial, check out my multiplayer survival game course. Do you want to learn how to make a multiplayer survival game inside of Unreal Engine 5? Now you can do just that by following my multiplayer survival game course that teaches you step by step how to make a multiplayer survival game inside of Unreal Engine 5. In this course, you will learn how to make things like a drag and drop inventory system, a complete crafting system where you can craft all sorts of different items, a harvesting system where you can chop down any tree, rock, or bush that you see on the map. We create 9 unique weapons and tools, things like a rocket launcher, pickaxe, hatchet, rifle, bow, and so much more. We create an entire building system where you can build your own bases using foundations, walls, ceilings. We add a raiding system where you can attack other players and raid their bases for loot. Then we create this open world map that has different biomes, procedural foliage. This course was designed with beginners in mind, so if you are new to game development or Unreal Engine, you can take this entire course. I walk you through step by step, and I explain the why behind what we are doing through each lecture. All of the project files for this course are included, so you don't have to worry about purchasing any other additional marketplace assets. All of the lectures are recorded in 1080p with high quality audio. This course is currently in early access, but if you enroll today, you'll get a big early access discount. The price of this course will be raised later on, but if you enroll now, you will get access to the entire course and all future lectures that will be added. So take your game development skills to the next level by enrolling in this course. The link will be in the description below, or you can head over to smartpoly.teachable.com to check out the course. So with that being said, hope to see you guys there. Alright, so first things first, launch Unreal Engine 5.1, so go ahead and click launch. And we're going to create, under the games, we're going to create a third-person template game. But keep in mind, you can pick really any template. It doesn't really matter. It's totally up to you. I'm going to go ahead and name this to Elden Ring Environment. And click Create. So now we're in our project. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder. So right-click, create a new folder. This will be called Environment. So in there, we're going to create a new level. So let's go to File, New Level. And we're going to create a empty open world map. So go ahead, select that, click create. And so now we need to create our lighting, but luckily under our window environment light mixer, we have all the built-in tools that we need. So just click create skylight, create atmospheric light, create sky atmosphere, create volumetric cloud, and create height fog. So now we have all of our lighting and clouds just like that. Hit the save button. Save our new map into our environment, and just click save. And now we can go ahead and create our landscape that will be our terrain for our level. So go to our landscape mode. So if you've never played around much with landscapes, basically the only thing you need to know is if you increase the overall resolution, you're going to increase the size of your landscape. If you set all the settings to the max, you can go all the way up to 8,000 by 8,000, so 8K landscape, which is the largest size. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep things small. So we're going to do 31 by 31 quads, 2 by 2 sections, and we're going to have 1,055 by 1,055. And this will be a good size for us, but like I said, you can increase the overall resolution. And we'll just click create. So now that we have our landscape here, it will put us into the landscape edit mode. So we have this sculpt brush. So if you left click, that will allow you to sculpt. And basically what we want to do is we want to sort of zoom out and sort of make an outline for our level. So we're going to block it out by sculpting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my brush size here. And I'm going to make sort of a U shape. So I'm going to start right over here. And if you use the flatten tool, What it does is it takes the current height that you sculpted at. So you can see when I take the sculpt brush and I raise up the terrain, you can take the flatten tool and create a sort of bridge. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make sort of a shape or pathway and a valley. So I'm going to start over here and make sort of a U shape and drag off of this area so it's nice and flat. And we'll go back in and give this some better slope. But this is our basic shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to refine this shape, and you can flatten the terrain around it if you want to remove part of this pathway. And basically we're going to make sort of a pathway that leads up to the center piece. And so we can take the sculpt tool and sculpt this up so that this is much higher of a vantage point, and sort of flatten it out like so. Then we could take this smooth tool and smooth this so it's sort of this ramp, okay? So it gradually inclines. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up sort of a vantage point right here, and it's going to look over this valley, and we're going to have a pathway that leads all the way up to this area. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep sculpting and sort of make this pathway a little bit more curvy. So I'm going to take this part and kind of curve it out like so. Maybe just add a little bit more curve into here. Okay, something like that. And then for this valley, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take part of the mountain and sculpt it like this so that it has some sort of depth to it. So we'll kind of sculpt it like so. Just so it, gradually slopes down into a valley. Then we can take the smooth tool and smooth that down so it gradually descends. So this general area is going to be our vantage point. So what I'm going to do is take the sculpt tool and sculpt this up, and maybe we'll take this and flatten this out a little bit like so. So our character is going to sit exactly right here. We'll just smooth this part out, and we want to have this pathway dip down and go all the way back up. So to dip down in your terrain, you just want to go to the sculpt, and if you hold down shift and left click, it will indent the terrain. Okay, so you will remove or subtract when you sculpt. Okay, then we want to just smooth the edges a little bit like so, and sort of smooth out the pathway that we have. And let's make sure that we keep this as flat as possible. So let's flatten this part out a little bit like so. Smooth this part out, and let's go ahead and get ourselves a character that we can set right here. That way we can know where exactly our vantage point is and how it's going to look. So if we go to our content drawer under the characters, since this is a third-person template, we have under the mannequin meshes, we have a mannequin mesh that we can drag out and place in our level. And if you hit F, you can focus onto the mannequin. Basically, this will kind of give us an idea of how our level will look like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this section out a little bit more. So I'm going to flatten this part out. Make this section a little bit wider. And there's no really perfect way of doing this. It's just kind of messing around and playing around with the sculpt brushes and just seeing how it looks. So I think I'm going to erase part of this. You can play around with the brush size, and let's just flatten part of this pathway out. And I might make the valley a little bit more sculpted out here, so it's a little bit lower. Now over in this section, we can just flatten a couple of parts out like so. Kind of give it sort of like this breakup. And then we can just take our smooth brush, go over parts like this. Doesn't have to be totally perfect. Now over in this section, I want this to have a little bit of slope. So we can get our sculpt tool, decrease our brush size, and sculpt the indentation in the middle here, and have sort of these edges parts come out. And then we can smooth this all in. That way we get sort of a uneven terrain, okay? So it kind of slopes up like so. Okay, so we can play more with the sculpting later on. For now, this should be good. Let's go ahead and save this, and let's get some rock meshes so we can actually add the cliffs for this environment. So for that, I'm going to be using the Valley of the Ancient, some of the assets that we have inside of this sample project. It's free on the marketplace. However, the demo is 100 gigs of storage. So what I'm going to do instead is, if you don't have this downloaded, I'll leave a link just to the assets so that you can just download the rocks and import it into the project. Now, if you don't have Valley of the Ancient downloaded, go to the description of this video and download the content files here, the ancient content. So it has the geometry, all of the assets. And all you have to do is right click, make sure that you right click and unzip the file, obviously. Then just go to your documents, Unreal Project, Elden Ring environment, wherever you have your project stored on your hard drive. Head over to the content folder and just drag and drop the ancient content inside of your content folder, okay? Just drag and drop it into your content folder of your project. Then go ahead and open up your project. And if you look in your content browser, you should see under the ancient content, materials, geometry, Spire rock collection, you should have all these nanite rocks. Okay, so these have, you know, almost over 1 million triangles. So this one has 1 million triangles, 999,000 triangles. So these are very high quality meshes. So if you don't have the greatest computer, you might have a hard time using some of these assets. But what I'm going to do is shift select all of these and just drag it into the scene. That way it can compile all the shaders. And once it's done compiling the shaders, we can take some of these meshes and pull them apart here. And basically these are all the pieces that we can use to build the side of our cliff. We also have in our ancient content, Megascans, 3D assets, we have this Nordic cliff folder. And if we shift select all of these rocks, we can drag these into the scene. And these are some really good rock collections that we can use as well. So if I scale these up, you can see that these are high quality nanite meshes that we can use and incorporate into our scene. I'm going to take all of these, shift select, and just move it over a little bit that we have some room. Then I'm going to adjust my lighting by hitting Control L so we can just see what we're doing. So select some of these meshes, we can scale them up and basically just move them so to be essentially just part of the cliff, okay? And we might want to make this cliff a little bit more steep because you can see the slope not steep enough. So if we go into our landscape sculpt mode, we can flatten these edges just so it's a little bit more steep. And we can just take the pieces here and move it up against the cliff. You can Alt select to duplicate and just move the pieces around, rotate it, and even just scale them up, okay? We can take some of these pointy pieces and incorporate them as well. So if you scale this piece up, you can add sort of these pointy rocks to the edge of this pathway, okay? Let's take another piece and scale this up. Rotate it like so. Since these are nice high quality Megascans assets, you can scale them up without really worrying too much about how they would look, since they have a lot of detail on the mesh themselves. And just continue duplicating part of the meshes. We can rotate, scale them to add different variations. Then we can incorporate some of these other pieces like so. Maybe we want to make this just a little bit more steep. Now I'm just going to speed up this video because you can pretty much just place the rocks wherever. And I'm going to make this path just a little bit more narrow. So what we can do is go to our landscape, flatten mode, and just carve this part in just a little bit more narrow. And we'll take all of our mega scans, move it up a little bit closer, obviously. And for part of this spire here, you can just have some of these pieces sort of pointing up like so. And then you could take some of these more pointier pieces and we can sort of just add this to the center. Just have it angled like so. We'll take this piece, rotate it around. Just have it around like so. Now for the other side of this valley, we can do sort of the same thing and just take some of these pieces here, duplicate it across, and just rotate it over like so. Next thing that we want to do is we want to add a landscape material. So if we go into Quixel Bridge is sort of a free asset library of a bunch of different assets, materials, and all you have to do is click this little profile icon and sign in with your Epic Games account, and then you have access to all of the models, materials, and 3D assets for free. So make sure you log in with your Epic Games account, and then if you've done that, you can search for this mossy sandy ground. So just search for mossy sandy ground, and you can look for other different grass materials, but this one worked fine for me. So you just click on it and select your quality, click download, and once you've clicked downloaded, you can click this blue add. And what that will do is it will add that material into your project. So you should have it right here. Then what you want to do is in your world outlining, you just want to select all of your landscapes. So shift select all of these landscapes streaming proxies. And in the details, you should have a landscape material. So just take this MI mossy sand ground and plug it in for the landscape material. So now we just need to adjust the tiling. So open up this texture, and over in the tiling / offset, if you click the checkbox and expand this, we have a tiling X and a tiling Y. Now you can play around with this, and I did, I think, 0.02, 0.02. So if you do a value of 0.02, you can see it scales up the landscape material like so. And that should be good for now. You can also play around with the albedo tint. So this will change the actual color of the landscape. So say we want to give this sort of a yellowish color, or yellowish tint for the grass. Now let's add some trees. So if you go on the marketplace and search for Megascans trees and filter by free, this is a free high quality tree pack on the marketplace. Comes with all the trees that you see here. They're very high detailed, so again, if you don't have the strongest PC, you might need to find a less detailed mesh, but go ahead and download it and add it to your project. And once that's done, you should have this European hornbeam folder, and under the foliage pivot painter, we have all these different tree meshes. So if I go into the foliage mode and scroll this down like so, we can take a couple of these different trees, just drag them into your foliage type. Then if you select these, so hit the check boxes on these, we can play around with our paint density, probably set this to like 0.01 or 0.001, change our brush size, and now we can go ahead and paint some trees onto our landscape. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. I want to have the density to be, say, 0.0001. so not as dense. And then shift select all of these. I want to add a min and max transform, so min of say like 0.8 and a max of 1.3, so we get sort of a scale variation. Okay, so we can paint some trees down here in this valley. Let's change our brush size, that way we can place some trees down here, some of these little gaps, and I want to place them all the way out here. Now the neat thing about Unreal Engine 5.1 is that these are all nanite meshes. So with foliage you can have nanite meshes, which means that you don't have any sort of LOD popping. So it's very nice and clean for LODs. Then lastly, I'm going to just select one tree and do a single place, and then I'll place them on the pathway all the way up on the pathway like so. Okay, so you just place some of the trees like so. And I want to modify the settings, so if I select all of these, I want to make sure that this align to normal is unchecked. Okay, so maybe I'll erase some of these and just repaint them real quick, so we just have a couple of trees on our way up on this pathway. Okay, so say we want to modify the tree color. So if we click on this tree, we can browse to the asset and pull up the tree, and then in the materials we can browse to the material of the leaf and double click to open that up, and then we can change things like the actual color. So I believe the color that we can change in here is, if you go down to the color variation and click on the color variation checkboxes, we can set the variation to give it sort of a orange color. You can just play around with the different values in the material to see what kind of look that you get. Then select some of the other trees and browse to them, browse to their materials, and modify their materials as well. So just check the color variations and add in a tint so that we get a different color variation. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to add some height fog. So if we go to our outliner, we want to search for fog, and we have this exponential height fog. So for our settings, we can start playing around with the different settings. You can play around with the fog density, so we'll increase that up. You can play around with the fog height fallout, and you can reset any of these to the default values. I check volumetric fog right here. Then you can increase the view distance like so, and play around with the start distance of the fog. If you scroll all the way up, we have a second fog data, and I believe I also increased that up, so we have a more stronger fog, and you can determine how high the fog is. So we kind of just want to have this sort of area fade out. Then we can also play with some of the other lighting. So if we go to atmosphere, sky atmosphere, we can play around with some of these values, and what this will do is it will play around with, you know, the way that our scene looks. And I don't know, you can kind of mess around with the values and see what looks best. You can also play with your lighting, directional light. So if you hold Control L or click Control L, you can play around with the direction of your light source. So we might place our sunlight directly over here. Now we can add assets far out in the distance. So for example, we can take a big part of this mesh and rotate this around like so. Scale this up. Sort of place this on the ground, just so we have, you know, some background meshes that fade off in the distance. Just duplicate parts and move them all the way off in the distance where we can't really see them fade out. And then lastly, we can take our final part right here and we can paint some grass. So if we go back to Quixel Bridge, we can go to the 3D plants, and you can look for the different grass types. So we have, for example, this wild grass. You can go ahead and download that and add it to your project. And once it's added, we can go to our foliage mode and just select some of the different grass types. Go into our paint mode. We need to play with our density, so we'll increase our density. just paint this grass right over here, right where our character will stand. Now the grass material needs to be played around with, so if we browse to our grass, we have these two materials. So just open up the first one, and then for our color overlay, we can go ahead and change this color to blend in with the ground. Now you can also play with the coloring of the rocks. So if you browse to the rocks, we have this MI Nordic rock, and under the albedo color you can take that and sort of darken them a little bit, and same for these spire rocks. Now finally, if you want a character that you can place here, if you head over to the marketplace, we have this free Paragon character, has this very big broadsword, so you can download this and download it for free and add it to your project. Just select the compatible version of Unreal Engine, click add a project, and once it's done downloading, in the Paragon folder, characters, heroes, you can go to the meshes. You can see we have these different variations, so you can look at the different character models and see which one fits the style that you're looking for. Now for me, I went into the skins tier 2, and we have this mesh right here, so you can just drag this into the scene, and then we can add a pose to him because we have animations. Now what you can do to get an animation for this character is you can go ahead and select him, and in the animation mode just use animation asset and just search for pose, and we have this front end pose, so you can see he's just holding a sword. And yeah, that's basically how to make a Elden Ring environment. Of course, if you wanted to play this, you could change this to the BP third person game mode, so I think we'll just play as the third person character. But yeah, you could run around the scene and walk all the way up the pathway. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Like I said, you guys can play around with the lighting settings, atmosphere, to get the look that you want. If you guys are interested, check out my multiplayer survival game course, link in the description below. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next one.